Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first live event of the week for National Work Experience Week. Today, we're joined by the National Careers Service, who will be talking today about how work experience can improve your employability. Before we begin, if you look at the right of the presentation screen, you'll see the chat facility, and we're live, so we encourage you to ask questions at any time. Feel free to make comments and ask questions throughout the presentation, but there'll be time at the end for a full Q&A session. So thanks to everyone for joining us today. And before we begin the presentation, could everyone just introduce yourselves and give us a bit of an overview of your roles?
I'll go first. I'm Abby Kramer. I'm marketing coordinator for National Careers Service. So we've worked together to put the presentation together for you today, and we presented by my colleagues.
Hi, thanks, Abby. My name's Ian Logan. Despite my Scottish name and my Welsh accent, I work for the National Careers Service in Greater Manchester. My speciality, if you like, is labour market information, which is essentially where the jobs are and where they're likely to be in the future and how you can make the best effort to get those jobs. And work experience is a massive part of how you can get into jobs, and we'll be touching on that later.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Tan from the National Career Service. So my team and I, we operate in London, to particular North Central London, so Camden, Islington. And we provide free and impartial careers advice to those who come through our doors. So things like CVs, cover letters, but also your next steps. And we offer face-to-face appointments and telephone appointments. So yeah, that's what I like to do. That's what I do. Okay. So we'll be starting the first half of the presentation. So without further ado, let's begin. So thank you for coming to our webinar on why work experience is worth it. Let's start. So a little bit of housekeeping. Please put your mic on mute and keep it muted throughout the presentation, unless, of course, you'd like to ask a question. Unmute yourself if you'd like to speak, so there's the button there. And of course, if you would like to ask any questions, but perhaps you want to save them towards the end, please do make a note of any questions that you may have. And we can always answer it towards the end of the session. Okay. So just to introduce National Career Service, all right. Just so that you guys know that National Career Service is a service that provides free, up-to-date, impartial information and advice and guidance on your next steps. All right. So a digital service is available for anyone aged 13 and over. And we can also speak with you face-to-face if you're aged 19 and over. But you can be 18 if you're not currently in education, employment or training. So generally speaking, what we do is we kind of give you advice and guidance on perhaps where you want to work or where you like to learn or how you like to learn. And we'll help you set some goals and for you to make the actions to achieve those goals. Okay. So just to summarize the sort of overall structure, we're going to talk about why work experience is important, the types of work experience that you can do a bit of research on, how or where to find work experience opportunities, the do's and don'ts of work experience, and of course, any sort of questions, as I mentioned earlier on. We'll have a session where we will answer your questions. Okay. So just to introduce, what exactly is work experience? So what work experience is is that you gain practical wisdom with an employer by learning about a particular role, organisation or career path. So you can't, most employers do consider volunteering, work shadowing or internships as the work experience procedure. So why is it important? Because work experience is quite good to kind of gain certain skills that perhaps you've not had before, or perhaps you'd like to work on. And it's also quite good to have on your CV as well. So who would enjoy, or who would embark on work experience? So young people, for example, like yourselves, career changers, so people who want to perhaps change the job role, or people who want to return to work after a career break. So all of these groups can benefit from work experience in different jobs. Okay. So why work experience is important? So we've touched upon this very briefly in the previous slide, but it allows you to try an industry before committing a career in it, because you would probably spend time, money, studying or working on a career path. So work experience allows you to try it before you start taking out a loan to pay for that course. Another important attribute is that it gives you transferable skills. So what do we mean by transferable skills? So transferable skills are the skills that you've gained through perhaps prior work experience. Maybe you have hobbies like playing football, for example, or perhaps you've gained transferable skills through your studying. So skills like communication, perhaps teamwork, that could be used in lots of different jobs, lots of different sectors that you have gained from your previous experience. Work experience also provides evidence of previous professional work history that you can put on your job application CV and discuss in interviews with employers. Also as well, and this is also another important point, is that it gives you a professional point of reference for future employers. Okay, because many employers or colleges will ask for somebody's number address from someone that you worked with, so that they can say that you have the skills and also you have the qualities to sort of work in the job that you want to work in. Also as well, it helps you develop confidence within yourself, makes you stand out from other applications, and demonstrates initiative and drive, because often you would be seeking out that work experience yourself. Types of work experience. So now that we've talked about why it's important to gain work experience, the next step is to find out more about the different kinds of work experience. So generally speaking, you've got different sort of sectors, job roles, where you can gain valuable work experience. For example, you can get work experience within the voluntary sector, like your charities. Private sector is specialist companies and corporations. Public sector is the government, for example. Volunteering. Okay. So often work involves supporting charities or public institutions, such as the government, as we mentioned earlier on. Volunteering often can be selfless work because they often provide a service to vulnerable, disadvantaged or young people. For example, you could be volunteering at a shelter, for example, or you could be volunteering at a school or college, perhaps, helping young people as a teaching assistant. Generally speaking, volunteering is unpaid. So something to keep in mind when you are researching volunteering opportunities, if there's something that this is something that is a realistic choice for you. work shadowing. So work shadowing is, think of it as a more of a inside view into a career that you may want to go into. For example, if you want to become a doctor, it's actually essential that you take part in work shadowing either at a GP office, a hospital, or another healthcare provision. Often, you would work with a buddy during your time work shadowing, who you would sort of follow around, see how they do their work, and then you can kind of get a feel as to if you can see yourself doing that sort of position, or if that's something that perhaps not necessarily for you. Now, generally speaking, you are in the company for perhaps a couple of days a week. It could be a bit less than that. It could be a bit more. It really just depends on the employer or the provision that you work for. And generally speaking, because you're work shadowing, you don't have that much in the way of responsibilities. Perhaps you'll be only doing a few things like administrative duties, and maybe a few tasks here and there, for example, talking with patients if you're in a hospital. But generally speaking, you have little responsibility, which is good just to sort of dip your toes in. Now, generally speaking, if you do get offered the chance to be involved in bigger projects or gain more responsibilities, do say yes, because again, it shows that you have that initiative, and also you're getting a lot out of your work experience, your work shadowing. It's also a good time to ask questions to your work buddy as well, so that then you kind of gain more insight. Generally speaking, work shadowing is unpaid. However, again, this depends on the employer. You may be able to get some lunch on travel expense as well. So it's well worth asking or seeing on the work shadowing form, perhaps, if that's a benefit to you. But remember, again, never hurts to ask. Placement and internships. So generally speaking, most work experience in the form of a placement or work experience, internship, sorry, there are schemes available and they often provide a thorough training. Now, generally speaking, placements are often a year in industry and often taken by university students, usually in the second year, but it can be in the first and third year as well. Or if you decide to do a degree and they offer what's called a sandwich placement, where the 3 years are spent doing the exams and coursework, but then you get 1 year within a company. So for example, if you did decide to take part in an economics degree, you may do a placement in a finance company such as JP Morgan, and you do your work experience, your internship there. So generally speaking, if for a shorter form of work experience, internships often take place in the summer. And generally speaking, they are anywhere from between 4 weeks to 4 months. It could be less than that, it could be a little bit more. And generally speaking, like with volunteering and work shadowing, some internships may be unpaid, though some of them may be paid. It depends on the employer. But there will be benefits such as paid lunches and paid travel expenses as well. So again, worth to check in with that. And internships, and both internships and placements, they're more sort of extensive than work shadowing and volunteering, and you may have more responsibilities as well. So you may be actually doing things like, if you're doing a social media internship, you may be actually running a blog, for example. Now, this may vary from placement to placement. Okay, so that's my part done. I'm going to now introduce my colleague Ian, who will be talking to you about how and where to find work experience opportunities. Over to you, Ian.
Thanks very much, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Ian Logan, just to remind you. So I'm going to go through how and where to find work experience opportunities. And I've noticed already that loads of you have put questions in the chat, and an awful lot of those will probably be, you'll be able to answer yourself by doing some research, but we'll try and answer as many of them as we can as we go through this morning. So as I just said, research is key. Basically, research is trying to find out more about any particular topic. So where do you start with research into work experience? Well, first of all, you need to decide on which sector or industry you want to get work experience in. And to use an example from my own personal life, my daughter did art A-level and was really keen on working in graphic design. And she did a work experience placement with a graphic designer. And that actually put her off working in that sector for a variety of different reasons. It wasn't what she expected. And so a work experience placement may not be as positive as you think it might be, but you will still get valuable experience out of that, because you will then realize that perhaps the sector isn't for you. But usually people have fairly have good ideas about what their strengths and interests are and what they the areas they want to work on. So I'm sure you're all experts on Google. You can just Google companies within a particular sector and industry. I noticed before there was a question about accountancy. You just could Google names of accountants in your particular geographical area and then try and contact them directly. Before you do contact any company that you're thinking of doing work experience with, it's a good idea to look at their website and get an idea about what they do. And sometimes perhaps you could refer to them when you contact the company saying, I'm really interested in working for you because I've saw on your website that you do this or that. Some companies have a formal work experience application process. And if you do come across that, I think it's really good to try and get some advice before you do that. So ring the National Career Service or web chat with the National Career Service, or if your school has got a careers advisor based there, or a teacher who's got responsibility, have a word with them before you actually put your application in to make sure it's the best it can possibly be. The National Career Service website, which if you just Google it, you'll come to it, has a skills assessment questionnaire, which you can help to fill in, which will give you some help identifying your skills and interests as well. So these are some websites that you might want to look at. Glassdoor, which I must confess I'm not particularly familiar with, but apparently you can research salary information. And what I would say with salary information is, remember that when you start, your salary is likely to be far less than after you've got a few years work experience in a particular type of job. It gives company reviews and about culture, like what a companies like to work for, and gives you some good information on interviews and question preparation. National Career Service website again, really probably the first place to start if you're researching careers or job work experience. As I said before, you can do a skills assessment, but probably one of the best things on it is there's a series of job profiles where you can see what each different type of job involves and what you'd be expected to do day by day. And then prospects.ac.uk. Jessica works for a company called Prospects. This is a different Prospects. This is based, if you're thinking of going to university, this is a really good website. There's sections on the website where you can say, what can I do with a degree in English or in civil engineering or computer studies? But even if you're not thinking of going to university, if you're thinking of an apprenticeship, it's a really good resource to have a look at the types of interests that, if your favorite subjects, what types of jobs they may lead to in the future. So what if a company's website doesn't have a work experience section. Well, there are other ways of finding out about work experience opportunities. Networking is a bit of a controversial subject to some people. You may have heard of the expression, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Networking is really important to try and find out where opportunities are. As the slide says, if a company doesn't have information on their website about work experience, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't offer it or they won't consider it. There'll be a contact page on there where you can email them or ring them. If you do that, you're also obviously showing initiative, and employers like initiative. However, I would say about networking that it says here you can you optimize all of your search opportunities by using a variety of websites, and there's going to be examples on the next page. But networking, I think, is really important about using your own personal contacts, your parents' friends, or the your friends' parents, if you see what I mean. Most of those will be in work. They do different jobs. Do they do a type of job that you're interested in? Do their companies offer work experience? Do they know somebody else in their extended family or friends group who work in a particular area that you're interested in? Don't be afraid to ask people what they do and what people like talking about their jobs usually, and if there's any opportunities in those jobs. So once you've decided what your type of role you're thinking of doing, or what sector of the labor market you want to work in, there are numbers of jobs, numbers of websites, sorry, that you can use to look at it. LinkedIn is a professional sort of networking site where you create a profile. It has to be professional. And I should say that for those of you who are active on social media, when you apply to companies and to jobs, it's a good idea to follow the companies that you're interested in on social media. But remember, those companies will follow you back when you apply to them. So you need to make sure that what's visible to the outside world on social media is something, everything is, shall we say, squeaky clean. But there's LinkedIn, Indeed, student job, charity job, Do It for volunteering, employment for students, and Student Ladder. These are all websites which you can use to try and find out about opportunities and about more information on different sectors, and use to network. And so you found yourself a work experience placement. You're about to start. Sorry, I'll go back a second. You say making a good first impression. There's another expression which says you only get one opportunity to make a first impression. And even though they shouldn't, people do often make decisions based on first impressions, which is very unfair, but that's just it. So these are the do's. Dress appropriately for the business. Try to be as well presented as possible and dress smart where appropriate. That will vary from sector to sector, office to office. It wasn't that long ago that in some office environments, all men would have to wear a tie. Now it's very rare to see that many people wearing ties, except in very formal circumstances. I would expect that you'd all know this to be polite and friendly, to be proactive and offer your help wherever you can. Ask questions. If you don't understand something or you're not clear about something, don't be afraid to ask. You need to use the work experience to gain as much knowledge and experience as possible about that organization. Be prepared and organized. Bring a notepad. Make sure you know how you're going to get there. Make sure you know who you need to see. In fact, I've just preempted myself. So ensure you know where you're going if your work experience is in person, because you can obviously now, since the pandemic, quite a lot of companies are offering virtual work experience. arrive on time, but early if possible. People always are, some people, I used to work a lot in schools, and the teachers were always trying to impress on the young people the importance of being on time in the morning. And some young people didn't see the sense of this, but as the teachers would say, if you get a job immediately after leaving school, one of your referees is going to be your school. And a question employers always ask is, how often was this young person late? Because employers put a lot of stock on what they call punctuality. And then network, mentioned it before, network with people within your organization, make friends, and be social. And you never know what someone can teach you, but also you never know when somebody can mention an opportunity which you might be able to take advantage of. And then don'ts, going back to punctuality, don't arrive late. Don't underestimate the experience. It's simply good to have it on your CV, though it will be good to have on your CV, especially if you make a success of it. Use it as an opportunity to acquire new skills, and then that will help you develop confidence. Don't do the bare minimum of what you've been asked to do. See if there's other things you can support with, and make sure you dress appropriately. Don't like wear a t-shirt with a inappropriate slogan on it, for example. And then finally, well, perhaps not finally, but certainly near the end. So why us? The National Career Service is a careers advice service funded by the government. We're free. We offer impartial careers advice and support to anyone in England over the age of 13. And as my colleague Jessica said before, if you're at age 13 to 19 or 18 in particular circumstances, there's a telephone helpline 0800 100 900, or you can web chat with us at our website. So if you do go on work experience, enjoy it. It can be intimidating at first, but it is what you make it. And the more you see in that light, the more you will be able to explore a range of skills and hopefully better be informed when making decisions about your next steps. One final thing as well, one type of work experience that we haven't mentioned here is part-time jobs. So when you're of particular age, 16 plus, if you have any opportunities for part-time work, I would really recommend you take them, because that's a great thing to have on your CV and shows future employers you're proactive and eager to work. And so thank you and best of luck in your future endeavors. So it's time for questions.
Thanks everyone for that presentation. Some good tips and advice and information on that. I'll just run through some of the questions we got from the chat. We've got quite a few in. Some of them you might have covered already. Some of them new questions and just sort of general questions as well. So I'll start off with Josh, and he's asking, what type of skills do employers look for? And I suppose leading on from that, what skills can you gain from work experience?
Well, sorry, I'll take that just to start off, since I'm still on mic. Different employers ask for different skills depending on the sectors they're in. And some are what are called sector specific. So for example, if you wanted to be a chef, you'd obviously have to be good in the kitchen. You'd have to have skills around cooking, etc. However, there are what are called transferable skills, which Jessica mentioned, which all employers look for. And some of those are communication. So being able to listen, to speak clearly, to be able to make you talk on the phone, to be able to compose an email and send to somebody which makes sense and is spelt and grammatically correct. But also things like teamwork, that you're good at working with people to solve, and then problem solving, about if there's an issue, you can know how to work your way around it. Another one which has come up more and more recently is detail orientated. So you can look at things and go through it point by point. You're meticulous. You pay attention to things. So it's really difficult to say any particular skills. It depends on the sector, etc. But there are work experience will give you general skills about attending work, like the things around punctuality, about how to talk to people who are older than you, how to talk to different people you may not, who may be from different parts of the country than you, maybe of different religions to you, different ethnicity. You may not have had the experience to talk to these people before, and you may be talking to different types of individuals. All of that is really important experience. And as it said on the do slide, about being polite and courteous is really important.
Thanks, Ian. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I was going to say, just to add on to what Ian was saying about the transferable skills and just skills in general. Yes, it does depend on what sector you go for. I also wanted to add as well, because of recent events, IT skills are now becoming more important. So you got your basic skills like writing emails, for example, writing CVs, sending it off to job applications. That's just the basics. However, are you quite good at using Excel and PowerPoint to present information to people? Perhaps think about any time when you're at college or at school, you had to do a project with a group. Maybe you shared ideas and you also took turns in presenting a PowerPoint, just like what we've done today. So think about things like that you can not only mention your CV, but to employer as well, particularly if you're going into a job that uses a lot of IT, a lot of sort of presentation sort of skills, and also as well anything like coding or anything like that. Maybe you are a dab hand at that. Perhaps that might be something to think about. So think about what you enjoy and think about what you do from your hobbies as well. Football means that you're quite good at working in a team. You're also quite fit as well, physically fit, and you also can manage your time because you probably make time to go to football practices, for example. So I just thought to add that little bit as well. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Logan was asking, what's the best company to join? So have you got any tips on finding the right company for you?
Do you want to go first, Jess, or John?
Yeah, I could go first, actually. Yeah. So the best company, that's certainly kind of interesting question, because again, it really just depends on what sector that you want to work in, and think about what sort of job you want to go to, but also as well what you enjoy in failing that. So, for example, if you want to work in social media, I might have mentioned that earlier on. Again, it really just depends on you yourself as a person. Some people, some young people would like to work in a smaller company, perhaps like a startup or a local company, because the company is located to where they live, so therefore you don't need to worry about bus fares or paying for expensive train fares, for example. So maybe even like 20 minutes from where you live. Or if, for example, a young person would like to work for a huge finance company and they don't mind traveling to somewhere like Central, perhaps Canary Wharf, for example, then perhaps you would like to apply for big companies. I think I might mention JP Morgan, I think Deloitte, for example. But of course, they're probably more for if you've done a university degree and you've graduated from like a finance degree or something like that. So overall, there is no right or wrong answer. There's no best or worst company. It's whatever company suits you. Yeah. But just think about sort of the practical elements. As I mentioned before, is it close to where you live? Do you mind traveling? What kind of contract? So do you want a part-time job, full-time job, to fit in with your other commitments? So these are the things that you want to start thinking about, and do your research, as Ian has said earlier on in the slides. Do your research in companies, because not only you're thinking about what you can do for this particular company, but think about what the company can do for you. So any sort of training or any experience that you want, and don't be afraid to ask the question. And someone will be more than happy to help you out and offer you things like open days or invite you to the office, and you can see what's it like to work for that company. So that's kind of my advice.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I think that was great, Jess. I would just add there is no such thing as bad work experience. You may not enjoy the work experience, but if you understand why you haven't enjoyed it and what's wrong with it, that'll give you an idea about the types of jobs that you don't want to follow in the future. And also, I would say that, like any type of work, as I said, any type of work experience is good, and it's what you can get out of it. I used to work in a school which everybody went on work experience, and when they were in the sixth form, they encouraged everyone to get a part-time job. And I always remember a young person saying to me, I said, what part-time job have you got? And he said, I just work in McDonald's, or Mackey's as he described it. And I said, what do you do there? And he goes, well, just stuff. And by the time we discussed it, it turned out that he was responsible for taking money, which is obviously very responsible. He was responsible for health and food safety, which is incredibly responsible and important, because you don't want to give anyone food poisoning. He was used to dealing with customers who may not have been that polite, and some of them could have been downright unpleasant, and yet he was adept at dealing with different types of people. So there was a whole range of skills that he'd got from what he described as just working in Mackey's. And it's that sort of thing that you need to take out of work experience for what the experience has done for you and what you've got from it.
Okay, and just sort of leading on from that, we've got a question from Tia, and she's asking for help with finding out what she wants to do in her career. And then from Josh, he's also asking, can you recommend any sites to assess your current skill set?
I could go first on that one. So to kind of combine both the questions that are being asked, we've mentioned earlier on National Career Service websites. So I'm not sure if I can share my screen on this. I'm not very familiar with Webinar Jam. My apologies. I'm more familiar with Teams. But if you go into National Career Service website, there is something called the skills assessment. And it basically asks you questions on what you enjoy, what motivates you, and your skills. So the things that you're quite good at doing on a day-to-day basis. And what it does is that it compiles your answers and kind of suggests some jobs for you. Generally speaking, most people would find it quite useful as a starting point. And leading on from that, there's an Explore Career section on National Career Service website. And it's got things like different descriptions of different jobs, such as, for example, if you wanted to become a nurse, for example, it tells you what skills you need in order to become a nurse. So verbal communication, knowledge of scientific theories and principles, biology, and you've got to have a caring nature, for example. So those are sort of like the skills that they're looking for to be working nurse or any sort of health profession. And if you're kind of not too sure where to start or what you want to do, the National Career Service is a good starting point. And also as well, the job profiles give you links to particular websites. So for example, with nursing, it'll be something like healthcareers.com, for example, or the NHS website, and it tells you in much more detail about what the job involves. And also it will have things like videos as well, where it will be like a midwife or nurse talking about their experience, how they got there and what they enjoy most about the job, so that you can kind of gain an insight. Other things as well is not just websites as well, but asking around. So perhaps maybe your parents work in a particular field, or perhaps you know a family friend who works in a particular job that you may be interested in. Maybe ask them for their input, and they'll probably tell you, not only where to look for these sort of jobs, but also what they feel about the job. What's the best parts? What's the worst parts? So always ask questions, really. And again, it's kind of hard to say what job you do until you actually get into the job itself. And work experiences, again, just to circle around back to that, work experience is one of the ways to find out if it's the right one for you.
Yeah, just one thing to add as well. If you need to speak to anyone, just ring 0800 100 900 and speak to a National Career Service advisor, or deal with, if you're over 13, like do web chat with an advisor and talk through the issues you're concerned about your future career.
Okay, so the next question comes from Megan, and she's asking, if I do work experience with an employer, can I do an apprenticeship with them after? So what are the chances of staying on with that employer after you finish your program?
It all depends on the employer, but by doing work experience, Megan, you'll definitely improve your chances of getting a really good apprenticeship. It may not be with the same employer, but if you know the type of work you're thinking of doing an apprenticeship in, and you get work experience with a company in that area, then that will help your application to an apprenticeship. And who knows, it may be that you get the employer takes a real shine to you because you've been so good on your work experience that they do consider giving you an apprenticeship.
Okay, and just some more general questions about work experience. Nick was asking about the duration of programs. So how long do programs typically last, and when do they take place?
Well, I'll start, and then Jess, if I miss anything, you carry on. Work experience, as we said as Jess said at the beginning of the presentation, there's lots of different types of work experience. Before the pandemic, most schools did 2 weeks work experience sometime in year 10 or year 11. That's become less certain now, but you might do some schools have moved to virtual work experience. Like if you're doing an internship or a placement, they may last a couple of months, or even if you do a placement as part of a degree or do a year in industry, as it's called, it may be a full year. There's no real hard and fast rule about how long work experience lasts. The more different types of work experience you could get, like 2 weeks from school, a part-time job, doing some volunteering, it's all good. And like volunteering, you can choose how often you volunteer. It could be one night a week, a Saturday or a Sunday, or it could be during your holidays. There's no hard and fast rule to it, but the more experience you can get, the better.
Sorry, I was just going to add on that as well. In terms of, because I know, Nick, you asked about specifically for graduates, I would say as well that it depends on your degree too. Because for law, for example, I know that if you're doing law, the work experience that you have is really important to secure things like training contracts and things like that. So depending on the kind of degree that you have, will depend on what kind of level of work experience they look for. I know that a lot of people, again, just talking about law, for example, that is really key. And some people get it throughout the summer. So they'll do 4 weeks within one law firm, 2 weeks within another. But I mean, there's no pressure to fill your time with that much experience. Just to have even one for a week or so will be great. And it's not just about how it will look on your CV as well. It's about how it'll build your confidence and give you something else to talk about at interview stages for jobs or things like that. So yeah, it's really dependent on what the degree is and what they sort of require. But the more the better, really, but without pressure at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to add on what Ian and Abby was saying. It's what you make of it. And one thing is if you're wanting to go on to work experience or volunteering, again, ask the questions to whoever's going to be providing that. And not only how long it lasts, but what you'll be doing in that time. Because I knew someone who, for the year 10 work experience, was put into work experience in a retailers. I won't say which one it is, but they expected to, that they thought they were going to do, you know, customer service, you know, the real nitty gritty of working in a shop. But it turns out that the 2-week work experience was them stacking mugs and shredding paper, which sadly was not exactly useless, but perhaps not the work experience they wanted to. So again, it's not necessarily how long the work experience, but how you use that time. So just make sure that you know what you'll be doing for that work experience. And just to reiterate, you know, if there's any more responsibilities that you could be taking on, please do put yourself forward for that to gain the most out of your 2 weeks or however long you have your work experience. Just wanted to add that on, but thanks.
Okay, thank you. And we've also had quite a few questions and comments revolving around LinkedIn. So I just wondered if anyone had any tips for people setting up a new LinkedIn profile, and then how work experience can help with that as well.
Oh, I can answer that. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go
for it?
Okay, I was going to say again, if you look at the National Career Service website, this time you go on a page that says Careers Advice. And what that page does, it tells you things like interviews and CVs. And there is actually a section on creating your LinkedIn account, but also as well, there is actually some courses on the National Career Service website. So this time, you're going to go on to Skills Toolkit. So you click on Find a Course, and Skills Toolkit is free online courses. And a few of those will be on creating your first LinkedIn account. And it'll also cover things like what to put on it, security as well, so that you can kind of limit how many people view your profile, and just the general ins and outs, really. So that's kind of where you can start. But generally speaking, I think Ian mentioned earlier on, just make sure that everything you put on your LinkedIn is professional, because it is almost like a Facebook, but for professionals. But again, unlike Facebook, you're not putting on things like your your mum's 50th birthday party or any funny memes, for example, or any TikTok videos. No, it's probably more to do with news on that particular sector, any events, any careers fairs. So for those who don't know what a career fair is, it's a place where employers gather in one area and they actually advertise the job vacancies, and you can actually get to do an interview with them right there on the spot, and they may potentially offer you a job. So using LinkedIn is a good way to gain access to those careers fairs. So it's definitely worth your time. So that's kind of what I would say on LinkedIn. Moving on to you, Abby, if you wanted to say anything on that.
Yeah, sure. So I've just popped the links into the chat that Jessica was referring to in terms of resources on the National Careers Service website. But on there is, as Jessica mentioned, some information about creating a LinkedIn profile. So just some tips on there, and there's a video you could watch as well that's actually from LinkedIn. And it's just small things. I would say if you were setting up an account, just some tips I would give is just to get it first of all, and just sort of navigate your way around it. When you first sort of get an account, it will kind of guide you and prompt you to add bits to it. But as we already said, you know, be mindful of what you do put on there, because it is a professional platform. But there's just small things, like if you're going to have a picture of yourself, make sure it's got like a clear background. If you're, you know, of age to drink alcohol, to make sure you're not holding a drink in your hand, for example. There's just small things like that you make sure you're trying to keep it professional. And really, I'd say just kind of get to grips with using it, because it's a good way to use throughout your career to kind of see what other people are doing. And even if you're unsure of what to do or how to get to, if you know what job you want to do or something similar to what you want to do, you can actually find people who are in that job, and they'll have their often they'll have their work experience on there, and you can go onto their profile. Just be mindful as well, by the way, that the settings are set that when you go onto someone's profile, it tells them that you've visited their profile. That's all it does, but it's just something to be mindful of. You might want to change it in the settings. But yeah, that's definitely something that I would recommend in terms of if you know what you want to do, for example, and aren't sure how to get there. That's another avenue of doing it. You can find someone who is currently doing the job you're aspiring to do, and yeah, you can kind of look what their history is and how they got there. But yeah, it's really good just to put a bit about you and what you want to do, what your experience is in terms of education or work experience. And it's just a good way to kind of get to know what's out there. So yeah, definitely worth checking out that link on the chat.
Okay, we've had some questions in the chat asking particularly about how can I make sure I get variety from my work experience. Megan in particular was asking if there's a chance to work around different jobs at the same company.
I think that depends on the type of company. The larger the company, probably the better the opportunities. If it's a structured work experience from your educational provider, you can probably get that. You can probably ask if you can work in different sectors of the organization. But I go back to the thing I said before, that the more different types of work experience you can get, the better. So if you can't get a variety in a particular company, can you get work experience from a different type of work experience? So you might do 2 weeks work experience from your education provider in a company, but then do some work experience through volunteering with another type of organization, or find a part-time job with a different thing. So there is the opportunity, but it all depends on the way the company's structured, really, or the organization's structured.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Just to add on what Ian was saying on that, yes, it's always best to kind of ask before you commit your time doing the work experience. And yes, Ian's right in the fact that the bigger the company, the more opportunities you'll get within that company. I also like to say as well, there's nothing to stop you from doing part-time volunteering elsewhere, but also your hobbies will count, and anything, again, depending if your college or your school offers that. Duke and Edinburgh is quite a good way to gain a large variety of volunteering, because you have to do volunteering anyway as part of your Duke and Edinburgh, but also gain things like going out, doing orienteering and things like that. So perhaps if you're if you're in year 10 or 11, or maybe even younger, you can do Duke of Edinburgh, or you could do Duke and Edinburgh with your sixth form college as well, potentially. So you can look for big schemes like that. There's also the not to be confused with there's NCS, not to be confused with National Career Service, but that stands for the National Citizen Service. So I suggest looking that up as well, because they do quite a variety of experience, like helping out in local communities, charities and things like that. And I think they usually take place during the summer as well, so you can do it during the school holidays as such. So that's something for you to look for perhaps, if you want to get that variety of experience. That's what I wanted to add.
Okay. Well, I think we're coming to the end of the questions and comments in the chat section. So I just wondered if anyone had any closing comments or remarks to make as we close off.
I was going to say, just to sort of close everything off, be open to any sort of experience, really, because it all helps. Just from my experience, I did work experience my year 10 at ASDA's. I also worked as a teaching assistant, but before that I did work experience at a school. And things like that, you never know where your path could take you. So find opportunities as they come along. it may be a good thing to do something that you've never expected before, because you never know where it may lead you. And just enjoy it really, and gain new skills, and also make new friends and contacts. That's never a bad thing. So yeah, just enjoy really. That's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, I just echo everything Jessica's just said. If you do go on work experience, make the most of it, and hopefully enjoy it, and use that experience to take you to the next step in your career.
Okay, thank you. And Abby, is there anything else to add to that?
No, just to kind of agree with everyone. Just take advantage of every opportunity that you're presented with. Don't feel too pressured to do loads. Just do what you can, and also don't kind of go in sort of with one mindset. Be optimistic. Places, as I said earlier, just because a place doesn't say that they do work experience, try and reach out and find out what you can. It is what you make it, essentially. So, yeah.
So thanks again to the National Careers Service and everyone that joined us today. Just to remind everyone that the session has been recorded and will be uploaded to our on-demand section soon, so you can watch online at any time. We hope you enjoyed today's event, and we hope to see you again for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.